Welcome to the last official JoJo's Bizarre Adventure part that I've seen thus far. I'll get around to 6 eventually, but after finally watching 1 through 5 for the first time and making these videos, I'm taking a break to let my feelings on the series as a whole simmer a bit. Like with the previous installment, I'm going to lead off with one of the facets of the prior series that I thought hurt it. Even though Diamond is Unbreakable is still probably my favorite arc in JoJo, I'm a huge horror fan, and while every arc thus far has had plenty of Araki's penchant for horror, it being a murder mystery really appealed to my bias. If you haven't seen part 4 and don't want to be spoiled, remember I kept the main villain out of the last video to give you a chance to experience it without any spoilers. So, I'm no stranger to coming on here and saying that deaths are overdone in shonen. Much like the Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead, and Attack on Titan boom during the early 2000s, these shows inspired the culture of media to get a bit more unpredictable, a little more flagrant with how they killed characters. I know that Diamond is Unbreakable is from ages ago, but I'm only speaking to how this exposure has affected my enjoyment of the shonen death. There's one death in particular that might have saved this point, but their death is overturned because Araki simply didn't want them to die. By his own admission, for those in the know, I didn't either, but that's what would have made the suddenness of it impactful. If you are going to theme an arc around a serial killer, but defang him to the point of his antics only feeling like that, antics, you end up in a cycle where I don't really believe the tension being built. That said, this was something I only really concluded by the end of the series. Like with everything JoJo's, a unique delivery, style, and charm carry it cleanly. It really would have only took one meaningful kill, like the pair in part 3, to sell the gravity. It's kind of like when you're watching Demon Slayer and Tanjiro just keeps fucking swinging his sword at the demon's neck over and over and over, and they go out of their way to establish that if you cut a demon's head off, you get the kill, but then they keep cutting the head off and never getting the kill. You know, in the moment, you're seeing Uzui Tengen do all the cool fucking firework whippy shit, and, you know, it doesn't bother you. But then once you sit with the moment a bit, you're like, wow, that was like 8 false finishes in a row. That's crazy storyboarding. But, you know, Kira is interesting and rich beyond just, you know, having a body count. So it doesn't really bother me. It is just one of those things that I think in retrospect, I would have liked to see him have a bit more paw in the game. I want to see him have a little more grit to him when it comes to actualizing some of those murders, instead of just being sort of this character who has the potential to kill. Otherwise, you end up in that position that I'm sure if some of you have seen The Walking Dead, you're very familiar with this. The only people who die are the types of characters who, before they die, give you their entire life story, otherwise don't have any lines, and then disappear. Okay, alright, let's get to it. Golden Wind. Full stop? I love this arc. This is Araki and his element as far as designs go. The core group are all super unique looking. Fun fact, they're all so well designed that before watching the show, I thought Mista was the protagonist because he looked like he'd probably be a JoJo to me. Instead, we got Dio's son, who's looking, actually, call to arms. If you're in the comments and you made it this far, this is not bait. I need someone to explain how Dio's got a son. If he's got Jonathan's body and not his own, like, this man Giorno's hair turned blonde at some point, what happened? Is this just a JoJoism? Am I not supposed to ask? I don't think I'm supposed to ask, but I am curious. I'm curious as to what, like, the collective fandom has come up with, or maybe none of them ask, you know? So typically it feels like the main JoJo group is about 4 to 5 characters. This time we've got about 6. We got Bucciarati, who has such a cool design and his stand is fucking awesome. You got Fugo, whose stand is awesome. His design is a little whack. It's pretty funny looking, but we take those. We got Narancia. Narancia's the GOAT. We got Guido Mista, as I talked about before. And we got Giorno. And we have Obakio, who sadly doesn't get to do enough with his stand, I feel like. I'd talk about the antagonist, but again, if you have never seen this part, and I'm sort of set on not spoiling you, the reveal for who the antagonist is a main point of the arc. In part 4, I wanted to not spoil the look of him so that you can, you know, sort of experience that naturally. In part 5, it very much is a point that you never see the guy until you see him. So, for now, I'm just gonna not speak too much on the antagonist and say that if any of this looks interesting to you, you should definitely check it out. In each of these, I also tend to just talk about the big strength of the part and why you should look into it and what Araki has done to improve himself between arcs. If part 3 is where Araki sort of establishes his playground using stands, then part 5 is where this is perfected totally. Characters are seen coming up with unique ways to combat these stands rather than stat checking them. That's a big thing with Jotaro. For how interesting the enemies can be in part 3, inevitably Jotaro does just punch a lot of them to death. To his credit, this is extremely in character for who he is, and you don't really get another Jotaro in any of the other parts, unless it's literally himself, but even then he's taking a back seat typically. He's not usually the main attraction. I bring this up just to plant the seeds that Araki has definitely been getting better and better, building on the blocks he put in place and developing more and more situations that keep you guessing, like, how is the gang gonna get out of this one? But that's not even really the strength of this part. Instead, the thing that Araki manages to accomplish in this part versus the others is the building of strong character bonds that you come to value as the characters would value. If you watch or read shows or manga or anime or anything, this isn't the first time you've run into mafia themed anything, probably. The Godfather is huge, The Sopranos is huge, etc. One of the big core themes of settings like this is the focus on family, found family, and the creation of a family, even if it's not through blood relativity. This is important because you're faced with the question whenever you form one of these groups in shonen, which is, why would the characters continue to do this except out of a sense of justice that doesn't really exist? Because the assumption is that all of these characters are criminals, they're out for themselves, so on and so forth. They need to appear likable to us and also one another so that we can believe that they're going to keep marching forward. And I think Araki does stick the landing here. I'm not going to speak on why or what caused it, but this is the only part in all 5 parts of JoJo's that I've seen so far that did choke me up a little bit, dog. I'm not gonna lie to you. Hey, big dog shit. It got me. It got me. While I've talked on it before, other deaths in shonen, other deaths in media can affect me in that maybe I don't want to see the character go, maybe I'm sad for the actor, maybe I like the actor a lot, maybe I like the voice actor a lot. This was a unique time in this franchise specifically where I felt that death. A lot of the core themes of brotherhood and togetherness come through, and I think it's really vibrant in how the stands mesh with one another and how they affect one another and how they support each other in battle. Rancha being sort of a reconnaissance agent and still fulfilling that mixed dynamic of his stand being sort of like a toy biplane because he's like the youngest or one of the youngest. I don't know, it all comes together really well. Part 1 lays the foundation of what this franchise is going to be without realizing its potential. Part 2 is still mired in the mangaka's juvenile sensibilities, and a lot of the comedy beats have aged pretty poorly. Not unlike I'll Get Offended, but that they smell of a dude in his room alone writing jokes for himself, kind of like watching the first 10 episodes of OG Naruto. Part 3 is an aha moment, the matchstick that ignited interest in a character who has since become an icon in Jotaro, Dio, Star Platinum in the world. Part 4 solidified the series as something that can be read in earnest rather than strict irony. Depth and mirth in both hands, and as a statement to the industry it occupied at the time that seems so droll now. And Part 5 is a celebration, it feels like. Of all these parts, landing on characters and quirks that endeared themselves so much to me that I find myself thinking fondly of them, like a lost friend. This video series came about because JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is so unique. It's extremely rare that a series only really gets better. Like, I'm a longtime Dragon Ball Z fan, and after the Namek and Cell saga, I really can't say that it's had as high of highs as anything prior. It's definitely had cool moments, it's had moments I like, it's had moments I love, but does it have this consistency of growth that something like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure has? I don't know if I can say that, and it really starts with Araki having a story to tell and a voice that hasn't been diminished at all. I made a video a few days ago talking about how Super Dragon Ball has basically lost its voice, which is by far one of the worst things that can really happen to an artist, a writer, a novelist, anything. It's a problem that is very hard to fix, and it's why I hope that with the passing of Toriyama, rest in peace of course, that if they decide to continue the series, they look inward and really challenge what they have in front of them rather than sticking with whatever's in the manga. There are stories to tell that they haven't told, and Araki doesn't feel like one of those people. Araki feels like someone who is telling his stories. Oh man, this has been a long ride, huh? Thank you if you've watched all 3 of these now. Stick around for more. I'm going to be talking about things like Demon Slayer and JJK. I'd only really just started watching JJK this year, so I have a very fresh take on what I've seen. I'm not really like poisoned by having been caught up in the hype. But yeah, if you've ever felt apprehension to approaching the JoJo series, I would say that feel free to start at 3. 4 and 5 only get better. You're really missing out, and it's a shame that I waited this long to get to them. They're super fun, they're super light. You can watch them with people, you'll have a great time. You can share this video with people, if you got friends. I mean, I don't have friends, I'm in a room recording videos, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even talk to people. But I've been lone. Subscribe to join the club. Peace, y'all.